All right, welcome back to another episode on the Dominance Academy. And last night's stream, I mentioned going over orgasm control, but we never got into it. But that's okay because it's a topic that I wanted to have separate from the other topic. They were quite different. But yeah, I want to talk a little about orgasm control. And this is something that's fairly common in DS situations, DS relationships, and it falls under the umbrella of power exchange. And in DS relationships, that's basically what it is. It's a relationship that's foundation is power exchange, and and a lot of it is well, I'd say most of it has a lot to do with just setting out agreements. And typically, this is having to do with where, at least in my world and through the experiences that I've had and talking with other DOMs, is that the dominant basically lays out what it is that they're looking for and what's the type of DS relationship that they are looking to have, what kind of power exchange you're looking to have. And the submissive can then decide if that's what they want to participate in or not. And and then along the way there can be negotiations, there can be things that the sub wants to add, maybe something that the dom hadn't considered before, maybe they've got a particular kink, or maybe there's an aspect in the power exchange that the sub really enjoys. And there's a lot of little pieces that need to fit together. And it can be quite difficult, right? Because in power exchange relationships, the particularities can get very granular, and the the details are a lot more than in, say, vanilla relationships. See, like in vanilla relationships, regular relationships is basically like, I'm attracted to you, you're attracted to me, we might have similar hobbies, we might have similar goals, and then that's it. And and that works fine for like a lot of people. But um for people who have a lot of kink and a lot of interest in power dynamics, then things can get really complicated, right? So so what you'll find is, if you do get into a power dynamic relationship, you're going to be talking a lot. You're going to be talking a lot about those particularities, um, about needs, desires. You're going to be talking about your goals and the reasons for those needs, desires, and goals. And it's not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody to have those, all those details. Okay, people just want to get together, have fun, get to fucking, and that's it. Have a family or whatever. And people in power dynamics, they also have families, right? They just have a lot of detail about how they operate. And so one of them is orgasm control. And basically, this is where the sub is agreeing to give the dominant control over their orgasms, control over their sexual pleasure. And this can look like in a couple of different ways. Like, it could be like, well, you can't have orgasms, period. Or it's like, you can only have orgasms if the dom gives them the orgasm. They could masturbate, but they can't orgasm, right? Because like maybe some sub would be like, okay, like, I want to masturbate, but I won't allow myself to come. I don't know what sub wants to do that, but I'm sure there are some that are out there that would be into that sort of thing. So, uh, so yeah, again, and there's just a lot of those details that couples work out, and and they're all discussed. So, with orgasm control, like I was saying, it's the sub relinquishing their power, relinquishing that control, relinquishing their pleasure and their orgasms to the dominant, and it's them offering it over. All right. So it's if you're a sub and your dominant says, you know, I'm going to take control of your orgasms, or they demand control of your orgasms, then that's something that you should probably walk away from. There's there's a lot of dominants who are like this. And they're labeled as like fake doms and things like that. And but these aren't the real ones. The real ones offer an invitation. They offer this opportunity to have this experience. And and so it's not forced, right? It's not brought against the sub's will, and it's a complete invitation into the world with the dominant. And so, um hey, what's up, Jay? Thanks for stopping through. So so in this, it's an agreement. It's saying, hey, this is an interest of mine. And like say my relationship, it is an interest of mine. I don't really think too deeply about the reasons why I like it. There's nothing sinister about it. I'm not torturing her. She actually really enjoys having given over that part of her life, given over that part of her pleasure. So she cannot have orgasms unless she has permission. And this can be from a distance, right? So like let's say the woman is at home alone and she's feeling horny, she wants to masturbate, she wants to have an orgasm. She then has to contact her dom and ask permission. Ask permission to either masturbate and come, or just a period just to have an orgasm. Um that can happen. Another scenario is where, say, um, they're in a sexual act, they're involved with each other, and like she's at the moment, like her body is at that tipping point, and she's about to have an orgasm. It's at this point when she then has to ask, and it's really really hard. It's really hard to because they're in a state, their body's shaking, and they have to be trained to hold off in that position, and they can't release unless they have the go ahead. And this is not something that can happen overnight, right? It's not like you can just like will this to happen and say, okay, just because I said you need my permission to come, that means that this it's going to work, right? It requires training, it requires practice. So it's not as easy as it may sound. Okay. And you need to, doms, you need to understand that a sub or a slave needs to be persuaded to not have an orgasm or be distracted by their body's natural orgasmic response. But if you can't learn these basics, you'll not have an effective orgasm control training program. Okay. So first they have to want it. This is something that the sub actually has to want. Because if they don't want it, then you're not going to be able to move forward. And you need to be fully in control of the situation so that your sub doesn't attempt to have an orgasm regardless of what they're trying to do. And this causes the rest of the training to crumble. As soon as the sub sees that there's any weakness on the dom's part. So it's something you have to like continuously maintain. All right. And the first thing you need to do is you need to learn what makes your sub orgasm in the first place, right? Because seriously, like for every woman that's out there, there's individuated stimuli and response. So, like, what gets one woman off is not going to be the same thing that gets another woman off, right? And you could say, okay, yeah, they both enjoy and need, say clitoral stimulation, but how it's done, it varies greatly from woman to woman, right? I remember I was with this one girl. She could only have one side of her clit stimulated at a certain type of pressure and speed in order to have an orgasm. Like, and it was a very specific spot, right? And then another woman that I was with, she could have an orgasm from very hard stimulation with a hand, basically like using your entire hand. So like her whole clit was easily stimulated, and it could be something along those lines. So they're all very very different. So um, so just understand like what works for some may not work for others. And the beginning of orgasm control training will need to be a sort of exploration of, into what makes your sub ready to have an orgasm. And it'll work well if you bring them to the point of orgasm and then back away to begin the orgasm deprivation phase of the training. Okay. And that takes a lot of awareness. That takes the ability to watch for cues. So this very much falls into line with what I was talking about before with having like a conductor mindset. Okay. If you're immersed in the situation and you're listening to the music rather than just hearing it and conducting it, then you're going to miss out on these subtle cues of being able to observe and mentally record, you know, what your woman's body is going through as her arousal climbs towards to the point of climax, and knowing when to put on the brakes or when to kind of tap the brakes, okay, instead of just like completely pulling away. All right. So, and it just takes experimentation. All right. And it's important to let the sub know, okay, today we're going to do some orgasm training. Okay. Don't just start it, right, without them being privy to the situation at hand, right? Because like not every time you get together is it going to be uh a training day, right? Maybe sometimes you just want to have fun. But when it is a training day, when you as a dom are thinking, okay, we're going to be working on, this training, or it's on a schedule, say like once a week, or twice a week, there's going to be orgasm training, then you let them know, okay, today we're going to do some training. All right. So it kind of gets their mind into that mindset, and I know this from experience. Like I have gone into training mode without letting them know I'm going into training mode. And this is a mistake. All right. You need to be very clear as to what you're doing and why. Okay. So, um, so it'll work well. So if you can feel out and understand and record their arousal cycle and what is bringing them there, and then you can kind of get a feel for the distance, so to speak, between where you are and their point of climax. And then you can move into guiding your sub into having orgasms from things that they never had orgasms doing before. Okay. So, for example, you might want to stimulate your sub in a known orgasm making. Okay. Say it's like with a vibrator, but then you stimulate them with another body part, right? Or elsewhere to start connecting these points to causing them to orgasm as well. All right. So, say you could train them, say you stimulate them anally, right, while also giving them what originally brings them to orgasm, like from like a regular state. So like say they regularly orgasm from using a vibrator. While you're doing this training like consistently, okay, you start introducing anal stimulation while you're using the tried and true method. You're then making connections between the anal stimulation and the orgasm. Then you keep this up over a period of time to the point where you remove the known source, in this case the vibrator, and now you're linking orgasm to the new stimuli, which is the anal stimulation. And now the woman can have orgasms from anal stimulation. Now, it doesn't have to be anal stimulation, it could be anything. It could be oral stimulation, right? From, say, giving you head. It could be from just touching a certain body part. Okay. So I know a guy who can grab his sub's wrist with a certain amount of force and it will make her come. because he has trained that into her. Okay. Now, of course, this is all done consensually, right? She wanted to have that kind of control over her pleasure. So don't think that it has to be a stereotypical erogenous zone. It doesn't have to be. You can really start creating these associations with anything. All right. And one of the more advanced levels is you start making associations with certain words. And that's when it becomes really tricky and really powerful because now you can stimulate and bring a woman to climax with a simple word, right? And it's absolutely possible, right? I've done it in the past. I'm working on it in the present, and it absolutely works. But it takes time. It takes time and consistency, and having that mindset and having them on board. Okay. Again, don't try to do this if this is something that they're not interested in having. All right. So, like I said, once you create the sensations that they can orgasm from other kinds of stimulation, you'll be able to control orgasms in many more ways than you even thought possible. All right. So you can also prevent them from having orgasms normally, so to speak, by giving a punishment at the same time or verbal humiliation. Now, this is with consent. This is with their understanding and your understanding that humiliation is part of their kink menu, so to speak. All right. And this will begin to change their associations and change how they respond to that stimulation. So you bring in punishments or verbal humiliation to the standard means of achieving an orgasm, while at the same time introducing the new stimulation to achieving orgasm. So you're like, getting the same result, but now from two linked paths. All right. So another tool in orgasm control is in training is masturbation for your sub. Right. You might have them masturbate just to the point of almost coming to orgasm and then having them stop. And this will help control their desire to make themselves orgasm and hand over that control to you. Right. And you can totally implement this. You can say, hey, listen. Now, of course, they've agreed to this. And part of the plan is to say, hey, listen, you're going to masturbate as you normally would, but every single time for the next, say, month, you're going to bring yourself close to orgasm, but you're not going to let yourself come. And then when we are together, I will allow you to come. Right. And then this is another way of corralling their pleasure, corralling their climaxes. All right. So this will help them control the desire to make themselves orgasm and hand that control over to you. Um, you know, that's where it should be if you're in this agreement. You might also have a sub on orgasm restriction period or work with them to have an orgasm on command without any direct stimulation. And so that's kind of what I was talking about before. And there's a lot of techniques involved in this. Um, and it's like it somewhat works the way hypnosis works. And but you can basically make anchors. You're making psychological anchors to certain words in order to have her achieve an orgasm. And it could be something as simple as come for me now. And immediately they're having an orgasm. All right. And I've experienced this. The first time it happened, it blew me away. I was like, holy shit, this actually works. This is amazing. And it's, yeah, it really threw me for a loop because I knew it could happen, but I had never experienced it firsthand. And there was, I really couldn't fathom what I was experiencing at the moment. I was really surprised. Um, I was definitely set back, and completely enjoying it. That to know that now I had control with just a word, and that's it's really powerful. But I wasn't like getting off on the power. It was just excitement in seeing the entire set of puzzle pieces working together in unison, and it's really quite amazing. So, orgasm control, the training has many different variations and levels that will help you assert your control over your sub. And you can choose from orgasm deprivation, for example, as well as orgasm control by changing the sensations that your slave associates with normal orgasms. Um, so, one of my goals is to, I want my sub to be able to have an orgasm simply from giving me head and having no stimulation on her part. And this I do know is absolutely possible. Because I've seen so far, I've seen indications that it's headed in that direction. So I couldn't really put a timestamp on it, but I do know that it's going to be happening, within, the next maybe 4 to 6 months. And this is something that I think should be okay with many dominants because having a long view of your goals, I think is really important as a dominant. Like not having this immediate satisfaction and this immediate gratification sort of mindset. Things that you can build upon and then be able to look back at, what you've created and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Okay. And obviously the labor is a, it's a a team effort, so to speak, because she has to be fully involved. This has to be really something that she truly wants. Um, but I'll say this, that anything achieved through hard work is enjoyed more than just given to you. And I've experienced this in many aspects of life, and it holds true with orgasms as well. When she has to earn the orgasm through whatever means, when she gets it, it's a lot more powerful psychologically and emotionally than regular orgasms that she just gives to herself whenever she wants them. Sure, they're both going to feel good, but having the control aspect in there and knowing that she's earned it, it comes into a whole other realm of emotions that are now attached to the orgasm. And then from that, the I guess the after effect is a sense of gratitude. And then they'll be saying, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for letting me come." And it's not this like programmed response. It's a true response of gratitude. And that is something, that feels good. It feels good to have a willing participant be full of gratitude. And this can be anything within your DS relationship. It's not not just for sexual stuff, but when it is sexual stuff, it's quite fun to see them be in that state and truly be speaking from it and behaving from it. So really, when you get into orgasm control, the possibilities are endless. There's really so much that you can do when you start really researching it and understanding the psychology behind it, and then implementing it and then seeing the effects of the implementation. So once you can control the orgasms of your sub or your slave, you will be in complete control of their sexual satisfaction. And for many subs, this is enough to get them to obey each and every time. Um, so the orgasm control is, again, it's not for everyone. And I say that to many things in the DS world. It's a lot of fun, but it's also hard. It's hard work. But you kind of have to like look at the goal, and it's like, man, could you imagine? You imagine you're sitting there, you're in the movies with your woman, you're watching some fucking movie, whatever, and you're stroking her leg, and you lean over to her in her ear and say, "Baby, I want you to come for me right now. Come for me." And the next thing you know, she's shaking and making her panties soaked. Right? Like imagine like having that creative ability, that ability to express yourself in that way. All right. But just understand it takes time. It's not anything that you can rush. It's not anything that you can really create shortcuts through. Now, I will say this, that some women are extremely orgasmic. Some women are much more orgasmic than others. And and some are more enthusiastic than others. So there's some women who say yes, and there are some women who say hell yes, and then there are some women who say fucking hell yes. Okay. And they're all yeses. They're all willing participants, but but every woman has their own unique amount of enthusiasm for it. Okay. And that's totally fine. Like just because your woman isn't a fucking hell yes, it doesn't mean that she's not primed for orgasm control. Because if she's into it, she's into it. Okay. Just understands that some women are just more orgasmic than other women. And that's just the way it goes. And and that's okay. Um, I'm just going to check on this really quick. Oh yeah. Yeah, I got my girl some panties, and she didn't like all of them, and I'm just checking to see if there's the ones that she liked. Um but okay. Um but yeah, it's that goes along lines with the things of like having rewards, okay? Um and so she was being in a certain way consistently for a certain period of time, so I got her a little somethings, right? And I got her some cute panties, went to Victoria's Secret, um and then got her something a little bit more personal. And this is really important too, like with your rewards, is knowing what what they like, knowing the small things that they like, and being able to do things within that, but not just because you want to. I think when a man cares about his woman, he automatically wants to do good things for her. But this really needs to be watched so it doesn't get abused by yourself. Okay, and that's why it's really important to keep in mind this sort of view of everything, that there's there's a system in place that allows them to create wins, right? So if she likes these things, she wants good things to happen, then she can like basically like build points in order to get what she wants. And and building those points has a lot to do with just consistent behavior that you've laid out in their in your program, so that they can uh you know learn to be obedient in the way that you want them to be. All right. So then it becomes very much a win-win situation. So, but we're not going to really go down that road. Um, we'll stick on like the orgasm control. So, the orgasm control, uh, it's not to be taken lightly. I've heard of situations where women have been sort of trapped, so to speak, in their anchors. So they've been trapped in their anchors in the sense that, say, after they've broken up with their dom, or they've stopped seeing their dom, whether they were romantic or not, and now she can't come because she's made too strong, or they've made too strong of an anchor to her orgasms, and now she can't come by anyone's hand or word except her previous dom. And that takes work to get out of that counter conditioning. And it's like you see this in like movies and stuff, where like a spy has been programmed to respond to certain words, and they go into kill mode. I think Well, like the Winter Soldier was like this, and they had to spend time deprogramming him so that he wouldn't respond to these conditions, hypnotic words to make him go into kill mode. So, um, so yeah, it's kind of like that. But in my experience and in talking with other DOMs, this is not the most common situation. So when you're talking with your sub about orgasm control, give them the reassurance that they're not going to lose their sexual autonomy, right? Because it's something that they're doing with their will. They're willfully handing over that part of their body. They're handing over that part of their will, uh, and their orgasms, right? So they're making a conscious choice to do this. It's not being taken from them. There's an invitation, and then the sub is offering into that invitation. So if you're wanting to have a conversation, with your woman about having, orgasm control as part of your relationship, um, give them the reassurance that they're not forever locked into this. And if they don't want to participate, it can be broken at any time. You can go back and it can be broken at any time. And that will give them the comfort in knowing that their orgasms aren't trapped and forever linked to you. Um, and so let's say this is an interest of yours, as a man. And so my suggestion is if you want to bring this up in conversation, is to do it after a good session of sex. All right. This is a great time to talk about anything that's somewhat important. If it's too important, it's probably not the best time. But so let's say you get together, you're having a good time, there's lots of sweat, a lot of good fucking, body fluids, orgasms, the whole bit. And now you're both relaxed, you're both feeling good, the endorphins are high, the oxytocin is flowing, you're feeling close, she's loving up on you, and then that's when you bring it up. And like, hey baby, how would you feel about orgasm control? And she might be like, well, what's that? And then you explain it to where it's her handing over the control of all of her orgasms to you, right? And then she might think, well, why would I want to do that? Right. And that's when the part of the conversation goes towards earning, right? Things that are earned are more valued, right? If you work for that new car versus someone just giving you a new car, that car that you worked for, you're going to love it a whole lot more. And so you bring in that part of the conversation. Okay. And therefore, when that part is in there, that brings in, when it's earned, that brings in a whole new set of emotions that were never associated with orgasms before. And now you bring in a sense of pride, right? You bring in a sense of happiness that wasn't there. You bring in a sense of gratitude that wasn't there. And this is how it's different. This is how it's better, right? Well, in my opinion, it's better. And and you explain that part, okay? And then you can explain how it would work out in terms of, say, rules, like what it would look like, right? And it would look like, okay, baby, when we're together and we're having sex and you're about to come, you have to ask permission to come and understand that it's not going to always work out perfectly every time, and give her that reassurance that it's okay to make mistakes. Okay. And help her understand that you're going to make some mistakes too, because it's a learning process, right? It's an exploration process. Explain to her that, um, if she wants to have, an orgasm, like let's say, the two of you are really into oral sex and she wants to, she wants you to go down on her, uh, let her know that she has to ask. Maybe she has to beg, right? And you can set up those scenarios where she's actually begging for you to go down on her, begging for an orgasm, right? Not just asking, but begging for it. and you can set that up. Um, so there's a lot of, like I said before, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot that you can do with it. But it requires explaining. So you should really do some research into orgasm control. You can go on a website called FetLife. You can also just do a bunch of Google searches, but FetLife has it's a forum based website, and there's a lot of categories. You can just search orgasm control, and there's an entire group of people who are dedicated to sharing information about orgasm control, and you can learn a lot from there. Or you can get in touch with me. You can email me. We can have a phone call, and we can talk about how you can set this up in your relationship, right? And it might require talking to the both of you. It might require talking to you and your woman at the same time, on a three-way call. So, um, but I gotta say that despite it being somewhat complicated and time consuming, that it's absolutely rewarding. It's so much better than just having regular orgasms. It it just is. And I can see it. I can see it on their face when they're, exasperated and they're panting and sweaty, and they look up at you and they say, "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for letting me come." Like that's like seeing them in that state versus just having the orgasm and saying nothing, right? And like, maybe giving a kiss or something like that. This is it's very powerful. I mean, you could even add things on top of that. Maybe you want her to kiss your hand afterwards, right? So she's come, she's sweaty, she's out of breath, and she says, "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for letting me come." And then you offer your hand and she kisses your knuckles. All right. You can add all sorts of things. You can absolutely make this into whatever you like, provided they're into it, provided they're on board with your version of orgasm control. Um, but at the heart of it, just make sure that it's full of enjoyment. Okay. Make sure that it's full of enjoyment, because if you're not having fun in your power dynamic, then you're doing it wrong. The A power dynamic, yes, it's to be taken seriously, but that doesn't mean you have to be serious about it all the time. It just means you have to have the mindset of having consistency and being on top of things. But it doesn't mean that you need to be serious, right? You should be having fun. You should be enjoying your dynamic. You should have good feelings about a power exchange. So if at any point you're not feeling good about not feeling good about being in control, and or they're not feeling good about being controlled, then it needs to be reworked. It needs to be rewritten. Or you're just not a good fit. And this requires having that insight as a dom, right? I think this is something that you shouldn't just be surprised about, like if things aren't working out. This again goes back to having the conductor mindset. This Having the conductor mindset, being that 12 inches back and 12 inches up from your relationship, allows you to see how things are working, and allows you to see, all right, is this working for me? Like, is she growing the way I want her to grow? Am I growing the way I want to grow? Is she following the program? Is my program clear? Is it able to produce results that I want to see? And so, but if you're not aware, if you're not having that mindset of constantly watching, you're not going to be able to um, you're not going to be able to see the problems, like when they're coming forward, right? Because they'll just all of a sudden appear, right? But if you've got a conductor mindset, you'll be able to sit back and have like a longer view and be able to see things at a distance, which will give you the ability to manage a lot better. It'll allow you to manage the situations so much easier. And then you'll be able to sit back and go, okay, am I even enjoying myself? Is she even enjoying herself? Okay. Because there should be smiles all around, right? Power dynamics should be fun. And if there's frowns, they need to be intentional frowns, right? So, in the example of say she's into degradation, say she has a degradation kink and and so you're not going to use her name at all. Her name is whore. And that's all she is agreeing to be called. Now that if that's something that puts a smile on her face or a smile on her heart, okay? Because on her face she might be frowning, but her heart is singing, okay? Then you're doing things right, okay? So just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that whilst there's so much involved in taking control and handing over control in DS relationships, in power dynamic situations, that it still at the heart has to be something that puts a smile on your face, that you're both ready, willing, and enjoying, right? And if you're not, you need to have the ability to see that you're not and make adjustments or end it. Okay. And like, to be fair, like a lot of guys, they're not going to want to end it because they get too attached because and when they're not able to end things, that gives me that gives me insight that they're not a conductor. They don't have a conductor mindset. They're not willing to see things as they are, and they want to see things based more on what they would like them to be. And this is not the way you should be running a relationship. You need to see things as they are because that allows you to properly guide things. Okay. So it's like, you may have come across like those parents who have like a Dunning-Kruger sort of effect on their children, and their children can do no wrong. Their children are always perfect, even when like the bad grades come in, even when they hear from other parents that the kid is misbehaving and like, being a bully or whatever. I don't know. But they're like, "No, no, 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 like, my kid's great." Like, in their head, that's just their kid's like a fucking angel, right? I've come across that, maybe you have too. But, like, you can't have that, right? And a lot of guys, because they have that simp behavior, they have that simp mindset, and, they're just because we're talking about power dynamics and we're talking about, DS relationships, it's, it doesn't mean that it's like void of simps, right? There's tons of simps in DS situations, tons of simpy doms, and which means they're not really doms to begin with, right? Because they pedestalize and chase after women. And so it's like there's so many precursors. Like if you want to get to a position of being a dom in your relationships, you want to have a power exchange relationship. You want to have something as specific as orgasm control, all the way to the point of possibly having it controlled by a single word or a single phrase. You absolutely cannot have anything having to do with pedestalizing the woman that's in front of you. If she's even a step up beyond ground level, it's because she's earned that step. But at no point are those steps going to be higher than your head. At no point are those steps going to bring her eye to eye, right? But understand, like it's out of being earned. Okay. But guys who pedestalize women, who need women, they have that yearning. They need to have a woman, usually in order to feel better about themselves. They can't do this. They can't do this. They have a deep attachment to women. They have a deep attachment to, emotionally, getting fulfilled by their presence, getting fulfilled by having access to their body so that they can say to themselves, okay, I'm a worthy man because I got this woman, right? I'm good enough. I'm attractive enough, or I'm successful enough, or whatever, because she's here. And that's proof that I'm good enough, right? To a dominant, that's not there. Like I'm saying, like a true dom, right? That system is not there. Her presence doesn't mean anything in that way. She has meaning based on what she does. So the more she does, the more she's able to get on your program, the more meaning she creates for herself. Like it's funny, I don't mean to like refer to myself as a god, but that phrase that I hear Christians say often, what is it? God helps those that helps themselves. And it's sort of along those same lines, right? So she gains respect by getting on the program. She gains love by getting on the program. She gains to deeper access to deeper levels of herself by getting on the program, right? She gains caring by getting on the program. She gains everything that she could possibly need by getting on the program. I mean, provided your program actually is effective and can do the things that it needs to do, right? For you, for the relationship, and for her, right? But these guys, they don't have a program. They don't have a system in which anyone can grow. So I'll leave you with this thought that the program must come first. Always. Your mind should first be on the program. Then you're switching over to looking at her behavior. And then it switches back to the program to see if things are in alignment. But your view, your perceptions, your judgments, it's all coming from your program's lens first, from the lens of your constitution first. All right. So that's always first. Then you can move forward and start looking at her behavior, start looking at her words, start looking at her consistency or inconsistencies. And then from there, that's when you can start implementing things because now you have a basis in which to implement. Okay. You basically have like a variety of measuring sticks to then say, okay, you need to move over 2 inches. You need to move forward 4 inches, right? You need to move back 1 inch. This is, that's the benefit of having a system, of having rules, right? Of having this level of control, because then you're informing her of where to be and how to be. All right. Okay. So that's what I'm going to leave you there. I'm not going to run down like another tangent too deeply. So there you have it about orgasm control, a little bit about programs. So if you do have any questions about orgasm control or how to bring orgasm control into your relationships, um, feel free to contact me. I encourage you to write me an email at thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. And from there we can set up a call. It can be just between us, or it can be between us and your woman, and we can all talk about it. And again, it's got to be something that she's actually interested in. Okay. But we can talk about that, how to breach that subject and how to bring it into her awareness, and and how to help her understand that it's a purely enjoyable, even more enjoyable process than having just plain old orgasms on their own. All right. Until next time, take care.